Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully you all are having a wonderful day today. So, of course, today is Friday, October 8th, and that means that we are one day away from the Deontay Wilder versus Tyson Fury trilogy. Of course, excuse me, this fight happens tomorrow night. I don't remember exactly what time it starts, but overall, I certainly will be tuning in, or overall, I will be watching the fight for sure, because I think that this is a very, very interesting fight. Now, my favorite tomorrow going into the fight, it does have to be Tyson Fury, because Tyson Fury in both fights has shown me so far that I believe overall that Tyson Fury is just clearly the more superior boxer. Now, Deontay Wilder, of course, I believe that he always has a chance because of his punching power and overall because of his athleticism. And not only that, he is 6'7", and all in all, he has an 80-something inch reach. So it's not like Tyson Fury, excuse me, in terms of height and reach, it's not like he completely outsizes Deontay Wilder. That's something that Deontay Wilder also has in his side as well. But when it comes down to it overall, I just don't know if I see him beating Tyson Fury. I think that Deontay Wilder, I think that he's going to have to face a lot of demons in this fight. And on top of that, Tyson Fury, he's just a very, very skilled boxer for the heavyweight division, at least of today. So we'll see overall what happens. But Skip and Shannon, they're going to give their take overall on what they think is going to happen in this fight tomorrow. I'm going to tune in a little bit here and there. Should be very interesting. Let's get into it.
How much of a shot do you give Deontay Wilder this time?
Well, Skip, he always has a shot because he can turn the lights out with one punch. And in the heavyweight division, that's kind of high. That's why people gravitate towards that, because one punch can end the fight, and Deontay Wilder has that kind of punching power. The question is, in the read, she read it, he's going to reinvent himself. Can he? I've seen a dozen of his fights, and they all the same way. He fights one style. That's what he knows. He's a puncher. He's not a boxer. He's a puncher, and he's looking to land that one big shot to get you out of there. Yep. The question is, can he? Fury is really, really smart. He's had an opportunity to see him twice. Fury is a boxer, and he's very skilled, and he knows the traps that Deontay Wilder is trying to lay for him, and he does a great job of staying away. Now, he did get caught in the first fight.
That's what makes this fight really very interesting. I want to see what type of adjustments Deontay Wilder has made. I also want to see how he reacts mentally to Tyson Fury, because Deontay Wilder, he can make all these bullshit excuses about how he believes he got cheated. He don't believe that shit when it comes down to it overall. And I want to see how he reacts when Tyson Fury, when he more than likely is probably going to back him up once more. But we'll see what happens.
But in the second fight, he dominated. At no point in time did you think, man, Deontay Wilder is winning this fight, or this fight is close, or Deontay Wilder can win it. Yeah, we know he can turn the lights out with one punch, but the way Fury was making him look, it was almost like, man, why are you even winning? How did they even make this fight happen? I mean, because it's like he was just toying with him.
Yep.
And so to reinvent.
Some people also believe that in the second fight that Deontay Wilder could have went on. Absolutely not. Deontay Wilder, he was not going to come back in that fight. You can tell when a fighter, even a fighter that has great punching power, you can tell when they're not going to come back in a fight. Deontay Wilder was not going to come back in that fight. He was winging that right hand so wide and overall so obviously, so repeatedly, that it was so obvious what he was trying to do pretty much after that third round. He had no other answer. And Deontay Wilder, he's never really been an A-grade skilled boxer in the first place. But when it comes down to it overall, after Tyson Fury was able to knock him down, and after those first 3 rounds, Deontay Wilder had no answers left. Once Tyson Fury knocked him down, and especially after that 5th round, once Tyson Fury knocked him down again, Wilder had no answers. All he was trying to do was wing that right hand in there. He couldn't do anything else. And I think he realized very early on that I can't out-jab this dude. I can't out-reach this dude. When it comes down to it, I can't out-box this dude. There's almost nothing that I can outdo this dude in, and I can't land my right hand. So Deontay Wilder, he can claim overall that Mark Breland, that he stopped that fight early. He saved your life, Deontay, because you did not have, in my opinion, this is my view, I don't think that he had enough power in that right hand anymore. Don't get me wrong, I don't think that Tyson Fury wanted to take a flush shot. But if Tyson Fury, as long as he was going to be careful, and as long as Tyson Fury was going to be somewhat on guard, Deontay Wilder, after those first 3 rounds, that right hand really was nowhere near the same threat that it was in the first fight and within those first 3 rounds, because Deontay Wilder had been drained so much by Tyson Fury punishing him that I don't think that it would have mattered.
Himself. Can he reinvent himself after he's had so much success doing it that way? Skip, look, I think the only way that Deontay Wilder can win this fight is that he knocks him out. I don't believe he's skilled enough as a boxer to go 12 rounds and outpoint Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury can win this fight in a multitude of ways because he's the more skilled of the fighters. Yes, he can win by points.
I agree with that. Do I believe overall that Deontay Wilder, if he wins, do I believe that he'll win by points? Not unless he gets multiple knockdowns. And all in all, he's just able to hurt Tyson Fury throughout the majority of the fight. That's the only way I could possibly see Deontay Wilder winning against Tyson Fury by decision. But when it comes down to the overall, I don't know. I just don't know if I see that. And I really need to see how Deontay Wilder, how he tries to make adjustments. I'm not saying that he's not going to try to make adjustments, but I need to see overall how sharp he looks. And if I had to guess, he's probably going to look a little bit raw. And he may be a little bit more timid to throw than what some people think. Excuse me. I think a lot of people, they think that Deontay Wilder, that he's just going to go in there and try to beat the hell out of Tyson Fury, and overall that he's either going to be on the back foot or he's going to counter every single time Tyson Fury, tries to go in on him. But I think Deontay Wilder, I think he might be a little bit tentative to throw. But we'll see what happens.
Yes, he can knock him out. We just saw it the last time they fought. So for me, Skip, I'm not as confident in Fury as I once was, because once I heard he was going to come in the ring at damn near 300 pounds, at some point in time, rounds 5, 6, 7, if Wilder can get it to the deeper rounds, stamina is going to have to play a role in that. Yeah, you're bigger, stronger, but you got to carry that weight around for 3 minutes and no.
I actually don't think that it's that big of a deal, and some people overall may think that it is. Some people may heavily disagree. I don't necessarily think that it is that big of a deal, because Tyson Fury, I just think that he's trying to batter up Deontay Wilder and get him out of there. That's what I believe that he's trying to do. But Tyson Fury, man, Tyson Fury is just one of those guys where, once again, I've already said this, Tyson Fury is never going to be a guy that is going to be a Sports Illustrated model. He's never going to be, now those just might be women, I'm not sure, but because I don't really pay attention to that stuff. But when it comes down to it overall, he's never going to be on Fitness Magazine. He's never going to be on Men's Health or anything like that. Tyson Fury is never going to be a guy that looks great. A lot of people, they love to make fun of him because of his love handles and overall because he has a little bit of flab towards him. But it's the same thing with Andrew Ruiz. Andrew Ruiz, he's never going to be a guy that has a six-pack. He's never going to be a guy that has excellent pecs or overall, has the greatest muscles around. But he can still hit when it comes down to it. And he has a great gas tank. Tyson Fury is just one of those dudes that I believe personally that he really, in all actuality, could probably carry around 300 pounds. And I think that he'd be okay. I think as long as he's not anywhere over the 300 mark, I probably wouldn't worry.
Rounds. So it's not like all of a sudden you 200, 300 pounds and that's not going to be a factor, because I do believe it will be a factor.
And Deontay Wilder, in my opinion, he actually has worse stamina than what Tyson Fury does. And a certain amount of people overall, they disagree. But Tyson Fury, he can go all the live long damn day. I've seen Tyson Fury. I've never seen Tyson Fury tired in a fight. Not even a little bit. I've never seen Tyson Fury tired in a fight. Even when he came back against Deontay Wilder and was 250. And, sure, he was lighter in that fight than what he was in the rematch. But he was not in as good a shape, if you know what I mean. Just because you're lighter does not mean overall that you're in better shape. So it is what it is.
Question is, can Deontay Wilder box him long enough to get it to those later rounds so he can land that power shot, okay, and turn the light out on Fury?
All right.
And that depends on how much damage Tyson Fury lands on him in the early rounds as well. Because I don't give a shit what Deontay Wilder says. He knows damn well that Tyson Fury can hurt his ass.
I don't believe he can. I'm gonna say Fury wins in a decision.
Are you?
I am.
Okay. A decision, just
points.
Okay, I know.
I'm going to say that he wins by knockout. That's what I'm going to personally say.
But just will he win easily like he?
No, I don't think it'll be as easily as he won last time, Skip. Because like I said, an extra 20 pounds. That's got to play some role. He can't be as quick. He can't, because his stamina was impeccable last time around. So I think it goes. That's the only way.
Right. Once again, but I've seen Tyson Fury come in at about 270 multiple times throughout his career, and Tyson Fury, he's just one of those guys that has a great gas tank. And Tyson Fury, once again, unless he's breaking that limit of 300 pounds, I don't think that's really going to be a problem. Some people may disagree, but I think Tyson Fury, I think he knows how to pace himself. I think all in all that he knows that, I think overall that him and his, what do those people call those? His conditioning coach and his chef or whatever the hell they call those. I can't remember. The people overall that, do your food for you or whatever. Your dietitian, I suppose. Your dietitian. There we go. I think all in all that they have a plan, and I think all in all that Tyson Fury, more than likely, if I had to guess, I don't think that the stamina is going to be an issue. The stamina on Deontay Wilder, I thought, has always been a little bit of an issue because he gets majorly tired, especially in the middle rounds.
Only way he can win the fight by knocking Wilder out, he can win the fight by points. I think Wilder's only chance is to catch him with something in the later rounds.
But you're making the case that Tyson Fury will again win fairly easily. Right?
I think not as easily as he won the first time. Okay. Not as easy, but I do think.
You can maybe argue that. I think that there's a debate that Tyson Fury, that because Deontay Wilder, he is making certain adjustments, that Tyson Fury may have a little bit more of a difficult time. But excuse me, I'm expecting more of the same of what happened in the second fight. That's personally what I'm expecting. I think Deontay Wilder, I think there's a possibility that maybe he may catch Tyson Fury with something here and there. Hell, he may even knock him down. But I don't think overall that, once again, I'm expecting more of the same the second fight. I think Deontay Wilder, I think more than likely he gets knocked out within about 6 to 9 rounds, somewhere within that range.
Because he's the more skilled of the fighters,
yep.
He can win a multitude. He can be a chameleon. He can do a lot of different things where I think Deontay Wilder is relegated to this lane right here, which is land that one big shot.
Okay. I got you. My turn. I'm going to preface everything I'm about to say by making the point that I think our longtime viewers will appreciate. I have always been my own man. I am not a company man. This fight is obviously a Fox production.
Right.
Everything I'm about to say has nothing to do with this being a Fox production.
Okay.
It has to do with my gut instinct on this fight.
Uh-oh.
I believe Wilder is going to get his revenge.
Whoa, wow.
I believe it because I believe Wilder is at the rightest place at the rightest time.
Okay.
It reminds me a little bit of the sequence that we just saw.
You know, there was a fight earlier on in the UFC this year that happened between Stipe Miocic and Francis Ngannou. And I had a similar prediction in that fight to what the Fury and Deontay Wilder. And what I mean by that is that Ngannou and Stipe, they had already fought before. And when Stipe fought Ngannou, Ngannou, he had, he had that major power. He can knock your lights out within one solid punch. But Stipe, because he was so polished at that point, and Ngannou, he really, did not have quite the skill set yet. Stipe was really able to take advantage of him, and I did not know that Ngannou was going to be able to improve on his wrestling the way that he was able to, and also improve on his striking. But that's also a little bit different because Ngannou, he had about a solid 4 fights against very decent contenders before he fought Stipe Miocic. So at least he could somewhat work on his striking and his wrestling, because it was a couple of years, maybe even a few years after that when they had the rematch. And Ngannou completely dominated Stipe. Is this going to be one of those matches? Who knows? Maybe. But I just don't see it because I don't think Deontay Wilder, I don't think that he has as high as IQ for his sport, and I don't think that he's had as much time as Ngannou. In boxing, really in all reality, I believe, and this is my personal opinion, I think that you actually need more talent to become a bigger superstar in boxing than what you do in MMA. And that's not me disrespecting the sport of MMA whatsoever. But boxing is just a sport to where you need excellent head movement. You need a lot of defensive responsibility. You have to be very swift. You have to have very, very good feet when it comes down to it. You have to have excellent head movement, excellent counterpunching ability. Boxing, in my opinion, even though MMA, you can argue that it's requiring more a little bit in terms of, using your feet, grappling, and punches. There's a reason why when MMA fighters, when they go into boxing, they don't do very well against boxers, because boxers, they fight differently on the hands. And you have to be very swift as a boxer. You have to be very docile. And Tyson Fury, in my opinion, even though he's a little bit awkward here and there, Tyson Fury, I just believe, is the much more smoother fighter than a Deontay Wilder. That's what I personally believe. But we'll see what happens.
In the National Football League, in which we saw the Los Angeles Rams being the perfect spot, the right place at the right time to take advantage of the Buccaneers, the defending champs, whose minds and hearts were already going to Foxborough for the following Sunday night. And then we saw the Arizona Cardinals be at...
I don't think that this is a similar situation, though. Certain people may disagree, but the LA Rams and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, those are two very similarly talented teams, and I need to see what the LA Rams do in the playoffs. I'm still not 100% overly impressed with Matthew Stafford on there. So far, he's been doing decent, but when it comes down to the overall, there's been a couple games where, Matthew Stafford, that if not had certain things happen, like Carson Wentz getting out of Indianapolis, or overall Russell Wilson, going down for Seattle, or something else happening, the Rams could very easily right now have a negative record. Now, of course, shoulda, coulda, woulda, and we can't go by that. But when it comes down to the overall, like I said, I don't think that this is a similar situation, because Tyson Fury, I think, is a very reliable fighter. And I think all in all that Deontay, once again, I think all in all that he is going to try hard for this fight. And I think that he's laser focused, don't get me wrong. But I need to see how Deontay Wilder approaches this fight. I need to see what adjustments he's going to make. Boxing is it's usually much harder to try and make those type of adjustments, especially when you're facing a guy that completely whooped your ass really twice in a row when it comes down to it, or at least in both fights where you fought each other. It's very hard to make those type of adjustments in boxing. Very rarely have I seen someone get their ass kicked in boxing in the first match, and then they go into the second match, and then they're able to beat that guy. That does not happen very often. I guess Anthony Joshua versus Andrew Ruiz, but once again, I don't think Anthony Joshua took Andrew Ruiz seriously at all in that first fight. I think that's the reason why he lost, and there was a couple of competitive moments in that first fight between Anthony Joshua and Andrew Ruiz to where I said, okay, I probably think that Anthony Joshua, can beat Andrew Ruiz. Kind of like the Conor McGregor-Nate Diaz fight. I knew more than likely that Conor was going to be able to make adjustments. But this fight right here is like Khabib Nurmagomedov versus Conor McGregor, where I took a look at that second fight and I was like, God damn, I just don't know if there's anything that Deontay Wilder can do. But we'll see what happens.
The rightest place at the rightest time, because they caught the Rams at home after the Rams had won their Super Bowl against the defending champ Buccaneers.
Okay.
It just matters about your mental state at that moment.
At the time that you're fighting, yep.
It is so much mental.
And I think Skip Bayless is trying to make the point, and some other people try to make this point, that Tyson Fury, that he did not train well for Deontay Wilder, that all in all, he didn't do this and do that. Well, his sparring partners have said different. Jared Anderson, overall, I believe, has said different. So it is what it is, and a couple of other people. So it is what it is. Once again, there's been so many of these stories to where they say, oh, Tyson Fury, he's not really training. But then these same guys, these LDBC and new media channels, you all know who I'm talking about, to where they try to say then the next day that he got knocked down in sparring. So which is it? Is he not training, or overall did he get knocked out by a sparring partner? Which one is it?
It's mano a mano, but it's mind versus mind. And all of a sudden, I'm reading the tea leaves on Tyson Fury, and I don't love his mental state at this point, because let's step back and look at it. He did not want this fight.
I'm okay with Tyson Fury's mental state. I think that Skip Bayless, I think that he's reading this a little bit wrong. Don't get me wrong. I don't think that Tyson Fury, I don't think he necessarily 100% loved the idea that he's heading into a third fight with Deontay Wilder. But I'm actually more worried about Deontay Wilder's mind state. And the reason why I've said that is because I want to see how he reacts in this fight. Deontay has made a bunch of these bullshit excuses, saying overall that he got cheated and all sort of bullshit. He let all these guys talk for him. But do you really believe that? And I don't think that he does. I think that he's a very confused man. I think he's a person overall. Don't get me wrong. I think that he's very laser focused, and I think that he badly wants to win this fight. But I think Deontay Wilder knows that there's a decent chance that he could lose this fight. That's what I personally believe. Don't get me wrong. I know that Deontay in the past has usually been very confident. He did not come across to me as very confident this time around. That's just overall what I see.
You don't believe he took the fight serious?
Well, he can't, because he's high IQ, obviously, because he is a highly skilled, huge boxer.
Yes.
At 6'9", now going on 300 pounds. And obviously, the last time we saw these two, Tyson Fury was clearly the bigger and better boxer.
Right.
It was as simple as that. He was way too big and way too skilled for a Deontay Wilder who's not a small man. He's 6.
The size really didn't even have that much to do with it. It's just that Deontay Wilder, he's nowhere near on the same skill plane as a Tyson Fury, at least not as of yet. Who knows? Maybe tomorrow I'll see something that'll change my mind. But so far, I just haven't seen it.
6 feet 7 inches tall.
Right.
He weighed 231 for the last fight.
Right.
I assume he's going to be in that ballpark
Pretty
for
close
this
to that
one,
thing,
right?
Yep.
Okay, but he is what he is, and
Right.
he's not going to change,
Right.
to your point. He's going to be exactly what he was in the first 2 fights.
God, hopefully this thing stops lagging on me. Hold on, let me see if I can rewind it a little bit.
I assume he's going to be in that ballpark
Pretty
for
close
this
to that
one,
thing.
right?
Yep.
Okay, but he is what he is, and
Right.
he's not going to change,
Right.
to your point. He's going to be exactly what he was in the first 2 fights. So all of a sudden I say, well, Tyson Fury didn't want this fight to the point it had to go to the arbitrator.
Right.
And the arbitrator finally said, I'm sorry, the contractual language here says you have no choice.
Right.
You have to give
Right.
him. If he elects, which he did,
Right.
Deontay Wilder said, I want the 3rd fight.
Correct.
You have to fight him.
Well, I think that Tyson Fury, I think that all in all, he really wanted the super fight with Anthony Joshua. Because, of course, Tyson Fury, I think he looks at Deontay Wilder and says, you know, this dude overall, I pretty much approved everything that I needed to. And on top of that, Deontay's just not a dude that you want to face repeatedly because, of course, he's just always going to be dangerous. And I think Tyson Fury, I do think, you know, excuse me, I think all in all, when he does look at Deontay Wilder and when he says things like, I think Deontay Wilder is the most dangerous man on the planet, I think that he's telling the truth. I think that he's always told the truth about that on Deontay Wilder because even though I don't think that he thinks that Deontay is as skilled as Anthony Joshua, I just think that he takes a look at Anthony Joshua and he realizes that Anthony Joshua, even though he does have power, I don't know if Anthony Joshua is going to try to take Tyson Fury's head off. When Deontay Wilder is in the ring with you, he's trying to take your head off. And that's kind of the thing. So we'll see what happens.
What was his mind and eye and heart on? It was on Anthony Joshua.
Yeah, he wanted to fight AJ.
Okay, and on September the 25th at the Tottenham Spurs Stadium in London, what happened?
He got beat.
Alexander, Usyk, he came out of nowhere, although...
Right, but Anthony Joshua, when it came down to it, he did not lose to Alexander Usyk because his eye was really on the Tyson Fury fight. He lost to Alexander Usyk because Alexander Usyk was just that much more skilled than him. Because, don't get it twisted, Anthony Joshua realized exactly what Alexander Usyk brought to the table. People think that Anthony Joshua lost to Alexander Usyk because, or some people at least, they think that Alexander Usyk, that he beat Anthony Joshua because Anthony Joshua's eyes was not on the prize. No, he tried. He tried as hard as he could. But Alexander Usyk, his head movement, his feints, his footwork was so good in that fight that Anthony Joshua was just so overwhelmed.
He is really good and he's undefeated.
Yep.
And he caught him at the right place at the right time when obviously Anthony Joshua's head, heart, mind...
Look at that.
No, he didn't catch Anthony Joshua at the right time. Alexander Usyk, and some people may disagree with me here, I don't know if Anthony Joshua would ever beat an opponent like Alexander Usyk. He just does not have the chin. He does not have the head movement. He does not have the foot placement or the footwork. You know, he does not have the stamina. And he was actually even coming in lighter in that fight. If he would have been any heavier, he would have got stopped. So it is what it is.
They were going to Fury because it was going to be the biggest money, most epic fight
Right.
in the history of that country.
Right.
Countryman versus countryman.
Correct.
And you...
Now, there are some people overall to where I believe that they do lose focus. But I think all in all that you can tell when a fighter loses focus. Luke Rockhold, when he was fighting Michael Bisping in the rematch, and when Chris Weidman was supposed to fight him, but that didn't end up happening because all in all, Chris Weidman had an injury, and overall, he ended up pulling out. Luke Rockhold looked completely arrogant, which he usually is. He looked completely arrogant in that fight against Michael Bisping, and that's what cost him the fight. Because Michael Bisping, he took advantage of that, and he knocked him out in round 1. And I think Luke Rockhold, I think he regrets that to this day, because ever since that, Luke Rockhold has never been the same fighter. Don't get me wrong. Luke Rockhold overall is, he was once upon a time a very, very skilled fighter, but he also has his flaws. Don't get me wrong, he has his flaws is what I meant to say. But when it comes down to the overall bottom line is this, I don't think Luke Rockhold was ever the same fighter ever again. after that fight.
Said the other day, it'd be in Wembley Stadium. It'd be where all the biggest concerts are, all the biggest soccer matches. It's it.
Yes.
It would have been it.
That's it.
It could arguably have been the biggest sporting event in the history of England, right? Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, the bottom falls out because Joshua didn't just lose; he just got absolutely dominated from start to finish by Usyk.
Right.
So it's like, how can you sell it now? Well, you can still sell it, but not the way you could. It won't be epic anymore, right?
Yeah, because Joshua ain't got no bet.
When it comes down to it, it still would be an interesting fight. The fight that everyone is really going to be looking towards, however, especially if Deontay Wilder loses this fight, they're going to be looking towards Anthony Joshua versus what's his name, Deontay Wilder. They're going to be looking towards that fight. I remember, just like it was yesterday or whatever, I remember watching the history about it because I didn't watch the fight, when it was on at the time. But for those of you that are big UFC fans or overall know the biggest fight in UFC history, at least probably before Conor McGregor came along, it was Chuck Liddell versus Tito Ortiz. And at the time, when that fight finally happened, neither of them actually were the overall champion. It was Randy Couture. But that Chuck Liddell versus Tito Ortiz, that fight actually did more numbers than any of the Randy fights, I believe ever in history, besides maybe the Chuck Liddell versus Randy Couture fights. But when it comes down to it, the reason why that is because some people, when they were really looking for a fight for so long, they just want to see that fight. And it was the same thing with Mike Tyson and Evander Holyfield. Like Mike Tyson, he did not necessarily look like the same fighter. There were some people, though, that were debating that he was even more dominant than before. I would not agree. Now, of course, I was not really born in the time where Mike Tyson was his most dominant. But when it comes down to the overall, Evander Holyfield had been knocked out by Riddick Bowe. But when that fight finally happened, even though Evander Holyfield, he had lost a couple fights, I believe, or at least lost one fight, and Mike Tyson even lost one fight, that fight was still bigger than ever. It was the biggest fight of the 90s, I believe. Because when it came down to it, people all in all, a secret fight that they always loved and desired, it never leaves their hearts. So Anthony Joshua versus Deontay Wilder, that is still going to be the massive fight, especially if Deontay Wilder loses this fight.
Okay, we got something else. Okay, so now what's happened to Tyson Fury? Well, he's had COVID twice. And the second bout, cost him this fight for a while because it pushed it back 3 months until tomorrow night.
Right, tomorrow night.
And now we have the trainer suddenly saying, no big deal, the bigger the better. So what if we're going to come in 20 pounds heavier? 20 pounds?
Yeah.
it's a ton of weight.
Yeah, absolutely.
We talked about it the other day.
It is for someone overall that I believe overall does not have good conditioning. I actually don't think that... This is what I don't think Skip Bayless overall is. Some people overall, they may be acting like, whatever, he's coming in 20 pounds. I believe that was planned. I don't think overall that they just got in there and said, oh shit, well, you know what, Tyson Fury's 20 pounds heavier, whatever. Just like Deontay Wilder, their coaches, they act kind of similar when it comes down and they say, oh, well, Deontay Wilder, he's coming in a little bit heavier, but, his conditioning, as long as he's, fighting good and all sort of stuff, it doesn't really matter. They plan to put Deontay Wilder a little bit heavier this fight because they do not want Tyson Fury roughhousing in the same way that he did last fight. And you're going to have some people overall that complain that, it was completely illegal and all sort of bullshit in the last fight. No, it was not. Tyson Fury was not doing anything illegal in that last fight with his clinching and overall putting Deontay Wilder. I mean, headlocks overall, the referee eventually has to call them off. But Tyson Fury was not doing anything illegal in that fight. Now, both of them were kind of throwing punches behind the head here and there. But Deontay Wilder, he was trying to throw his fair share of rabbit punches as well. Don't get it twisted.
Just try carrying around 20 pounds for a while. Strap 20 pounds around your midsection and go for a little...
I called back. Same State Farm agent. Texted the next day. Same guy.
Hey, blink twice if you're in danger.
Guys, it's called service. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Trot somewhere. See how long you can trot with 20 extra pounds on you. Boxing.
Well, shit, don't tell Deontay Wilder to do that. He just might, he might just get his whole body exhausted. Shit, look at that costume that he put on last fight.
Is hard. It is the most grueling sport to me of all. I don't know if you box some. I boxed in high school, and I thought after 2 rounds my arms were going to fall off.
Absolutely. That's exactly what it feels like. And when your arms get tired, what do you want to do, Skip?
Wait, hold on. Let me rewind this.
know if you box some. I boxed in high school, and I thought after 2 rounds my arms were going to fall off.
Absolutely. That's exactly.
Jesus Christ, are you kidding me? All in all, when it comes down to it, I boxed plenty of times when it comes down to it. I've never been professional or anything like that, but I've sparred quite a few times. Me and my father would, spar a lot of the times because my father, he would teach me a lot of the things overall that I knew. Because my father, he did a little bit of MMA when he grew up and also a decent amount of boxing. And he always taught me to move my feet. He always taught me to move my head, to be defensively responsible, to counter intelligently. And, in my opinion, that's what a good coach does. I've also sparred, a few of my friends and overall a few other people who have trained. I mean, goddamn, you should not be exhausted after 2 rounds. Come on, man.
What it feels like. And when your arms get tired, what do you want to do, Skip? You want to drop them. And when you drop them, what happens? All this is exposed and somebody put a glove upside it.
Okay, what else do we know about Tyson Fury? In his past, he's had issues with depression. Mm-hmm. He had issues with addiction. Mm-hmm. He had issues that bordered on suicidal.
Correct.
And he had to come back from being a fat man.
Right.
He was a fat man. He was way over 300 pounds.
Way over, yeah.
And he
was like damn 400.
himself right.
Right.
And the skill was never questioned.
Correct.
Okay?
Correct.
All of a sudden, if you roller coaster your weight from all the way down to the 270-ish range, right, and then all of a sudden now you're going all the way back up to the 290-ish range, we'll see exactly what it is.
Right.
But it could approach 300.
Correct.
And then you made a great point yesterday. Okay, so he makes the weigh-in at 290, and then what?
I'm going to need to see the weigh-in. I believe the weigh-in is going on right now, so maybe I should have waited to do this video. But it is what it is. I'm not too worried about it because, like I said, now, if it was someone like an Anthony Joshua or Deontay Wilder that was gaining 20 extra pounds, then I'd be like, okay, you know what, that might be a little bit of a mistake because those guys, I don't think they know how to handle 20 extra pounds because those guys, they already, don't have great gas tanks. Tyson Fury is a guy that I think he can be anywhere from about 240 to 300, and I think he'd be good in all honesty. As long as he doesn't break that 310 range or that, 305 range, I think that he's probably going to be okay.
Happens. Well, he's like, man, I kind of had to cut some weight so I wouldn't look so bad at the weigh-in.
You're going to have to cut weight to be in the 290-ish.
Right.
And that's the thing, man. Some people, they're just blessed with naturally good, gas tanks. That's kind of the thing about boxing and fighting as well. You see some of these guys and, yeah, they may not have the 6-packs. They may not have the 8-packs. They may not have the biggest biceps or triceps. They may not have the leg muscles, all their bullshit. Like, people take a look at Anthony Joshua or whatever and they say, wow. Like, my good friend of mine, overall, we'll just call him the Green Bay Packers fan because I don't want to expose his identity. But when it comes down to the overall bottom line is this, he said, man, I just don't know why Anthony Joshua lost to Alexander Usyk. He's like the perfect fighter. He's about 240 and all that sort of stuff. But what my friend doesn't really understand is that sometimes when you're too muscle bound, that actually can hurt you. I mean, he probably understands that, but maybe he just does not understand that Anthony Joshua actually is a little bit too muscle bound. Like so many people, they don't know why Anthony Joshua lost 10 pounds for the Alexander Usyk fight. That's what tells me that Anthony Joshua, he took that fight extremely seriously because Anthony Joshua, he knew that Alexander Usyk, that he was going to bring it. And Anthony Joshua, he tried, man. He just couldn't do it because Alexander Usyk, he's too smart.
You don't have to cut it because they're heavyweights, so it doesn't matter. But the point is,
like, you take a look at Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury, yeah, he's got, love handles and flab, and sometimes he looks like he has man titties, and, he's never going to be a guy that, once again, is going to be on Fitness Magazine or anything like that. But Tyson Fury, he can box your ass off for 12 rounds. He's in there for all 12 rounds. I've never seen Tyson Fury tired in a fight. Never. He has one of those very, very gifted gas tanks.
It matters to your pride and your appearance, right?
Correct.
And then, knowing Tyson Fury, you might just say, okay, enough is enough. I got to go eat. Right? I got to go have
he's going to have to eat,
I'm going to have me a big old meal.
Yeah.
So he might show up at fight time closer to, who knows? I don't know. 305.
Yeah, he's going to be 3 easy.
Okay? We'll say 3.
I don't think so. Some people are going to debate me on that. I'm not so sure about that. But we'll see what happens.
All this is shaping up as advantage Wilder, advantage Wilder, advantage Wilder. Because Tyson Fury doesn't even want to do this. Look, he's been here and done this before.
Right.
I think Skip Bayless thinks that Tyson Fury is not taking Deontay Wilder seriously. I can guarantee you, Tyson Fury, yes, I don't think that he completely wanted this fight. but he realizes the threat of a Deontay Wilder, and he realizes that he cannot take Deontay Wilder lightly. I think he knows that.
Let's look hard at the two fights. This is the trilogy fight, but it doesn't even feel right to call it a trilogy fight because, okay, so Wilder won the first bout on a split draw.
Right.
But I watched the fight, and I know what
I've seen certain fights overall to where the favorite going in, and some fights overall to where I thought that they looked uncomfortable or I thought that the other fighter was in their head. And this does not appear to be one of those fights. I think that when I seen Conor McGregor versus Jose Aldo, I could tell overall that Conor McGregor, that he was a little bit in his head. You know, I could tell Dustin Poirier versus Conor McGregor in the trilogy, I could tell that Dustin Poirier was somewhat in his head, or that at least the loss was in Conor McGregor's head, and I could tell that he was not the same fighter that he used to be. It is what it is. There are certain fighters to where you can just tell overall to where they're in their heads. Now, that doesn't mean that Deontay Wilder can't win, but in my opinion, I think Tyson Fury is more in Deontay Wilder's head than vice versa.
my test told me that Tyson Fury was just better.
Right.
But it was a split draw, and it happened because they got to the final round, and finally Deontay caught him.
Correct.
And
Well, it happened also because that one judge, Alejandro, whatever the fuck his name was, that dude clearly was either paid off or overall he was a huge Deontay Wilder fan.
rocked him and dropped him.
Yes.
Right? And then what happened? Shockingly, Tyson Fury raised himself from the dead, didn't he? He just suddenly got up, and not only did he get up from looking like he was knocked out,
Right.
but he actually fought to the finish.
He did.
And made it look like he was just fine. In fact, he sort of took the fight back over.
He did.
But up to that point, it looked to my eye like he was winning fairly easily. So the cards were, one judge gave it to Wilder 115 to 111, then the other judge gave it 114 to 112 to Tyson Fury.
Which, once again, worst scorecard that I've seen in the 2010s. It's not even close. It's not even close. That is hands down the worst decision that I've seen in the 2010s. Unless the Arasani Lara versus Paul Williams fight happened in the 2010s. I thought that happened in the latter 2000s. But if that fight happened also in the 2010s, that probably actually is the worst decision.
And then there was a 113 all judge. So it's a split draw.
Correct.
Well, what's your eye test tell you about the first fight? Tyson Fury was just better.
Right.
Right? What'd your eye test tell you about the second fight? It wasn't even close. You used the word toyed with.
Yes.
He did. So I don't love the way Wilder made excuses about the first fight. He fired the great Mark Breland for throwing in the towel.
Yeah, called him a traitor.
Yeah, called him a traitor.
Said the man had loaded gloves.
Loaded gloves with some kind of metal in his glove or brass knucks underneath. And yet his own man, who's still employed in his corner, was the man who went over the...
Thank you, Skip. Thank you for mentioning that. You know, for those dumbass Wilder fans out there that say, oh, well, you know, Mark Breland, he poisoned his water. Well, how the hell? And, you know, apparently Tyson Fury overall, you know, apparently he had, you know, egg weights or brass knuckles in his gloves, all this other bullshit. So why is JD still in his corner?
And watch the hands. What you do, you watch the man's hands get taped.
And he's still there, so I don't know how that happened. And then he even took a shot at my distant cousin, Kenny Bayless, who was the referee that night. He took a shot. Deontay Wilder took a shot at him and said he was pro-Fury. Okay, so he's made...
Which is bullshit. If Kenny Bayless was pro anyone in that fight, he clearly was pro Wilder. Because both of them were throwing rabbit punches. And Kenny Bayless, you know, I'm not going to say that he was pro Wilder, but... You know, Kenny Bayless looked like to me that he was possibly favoring Wilder a little bit more than he was Fury. But I think that he tried to do the best job possible.
Every excuse in the book, which I do not love.
I don't like it either.
But I do love one thing about Deontay Wilder. He has extreme pride attached to extreme knockout power.
Yeah.
Right?
Extreme pride to the point of stupidity.
Right?
Yeah.
And he got shamed because... the world just said, you don't even belong in the same ring with him. And it hurt his pride so badly. I think that hurt worse than the beating he took in the ring.
Yeah, because, Skip, if you look at it, he got started at it late. He didn't have the amateur background that a Fury had. He's not the skilled technician that Fury is. Yeah. But you believe that the COVID bouts maybe had something to do with his training, and he wasn't able to train like he wanted to. And so that was the excess weight, and that's the excuse. That's like, well, we wanted him to be bigger. Yeah. Well, in actuality, you weren't able to train like you wanted to with COVID, and so the excess weight came from lack of training, not because something that you wanted to occur. Because if I had great success doing it like this, there's no...
I can maybe see that, but I don't think that's what's going on. I think that Fury and I think overall that his corner, I think that they realized that Deontay Wilder, they said overall that they were going to increase the weight. And I think Tyson Fury this time, I think that he just wants to put him out. Like, I think Tyson Fury, I think when he goes in that ring tomorrow, I think that he's literally going to try to put Deontay Wilder away within about 3 rounds. I have no doubt about that.
Wait, I've never heard this before. A fighter knocks a fighter out at a weight, and then he comes back in 20 pounds heavier than the weight that he looked so convincingly in beating the other guy.
And the first weight was 270.
Yes.
Huh?
And
273 to be exact.
Right.
273.
Right. And everybody said how great he looked. I'm listening to everybody say, we've never seen him look like this. He's in tremendous shape.
Okay.
And from that, you're like, yeah, but you know what? I feel like 290, 295 would be even better.
Okay, and you've watched and listened to people.
Also on top of that, Tyson Fury feels that the bigger that he is, that the more damage that he can take from Deontay Wilder, especially to the body. I think that's another part of the reason why he added on some weight.
Who have trouble with their weight over time.
Yes.
Now, whether that works, we'll see. I'm also curious to see how many body shots Deontay is going to be able to land in the first place anyway, but we'll see what happens.
You know, kind of once a fat man, you have to keep fighting the fat man
you
inside
gotta fight,
you.
yeah.
You got to fight it,
Right,
fight it. And maybe he gave in a little bit to it.
Right.
Maybe it shook him up that there's no Joshua right on the near horizon, right? COVID. I got to go do this. I got to go fight this guy again, and I beat him twice.
You don't get that big without eating. People say, well, elephant don't eat anything but grass. Yeah, but he eats 600 pounds of it a day. That's why he's so big. Hippos, they eat 300 pounds a day. Rhinoceros, 150 pounds a day. That's why they're big. They only eat grass. Yeah, but you eating 600 pounds of it. When you get that size, Skip, you got to eat a lot of food.
Yeah.
And it's like you said, when you have a problem with weight,
I agree. We'll see overall whether this is an advantage or a disadvantage for Tyson Fury, but I'm just not that worried about it. Because like I said, Tyson Fury, I really think that he's one of those rare athletes, you know, and a lot of people that look at Tyson Fury and they won't look at him as a great athlete, but Tyson Fury, one area that he's very, very gifted in, he can carry so much weight for his size and have elite stamina. Like Tyson Fury, once again, I think that he's one of those dudes. He's one of those rare dudes. Now, of course, he's 6'9", but when it comes down to the overall, still, even at 6'9", you don't usually see those dudes weigh at about 300 pounds. Tyson Fury is one of those guys that can weigh about 300 pounds and still have a great gas tank.
It's like having a problem with drugs and alcohol every single day. Because that one day you might, instead of eating the 3,000 calories you're supposed to eat, you eat 10,000. And here we go again. You got to start the cycle all over again.
God damn. 10,000 calories? Shit.
Food is an addiction also.
It's an addiction.
Yeah, I mean,
in fact, to me,
and I'll say this a little bit. I have a little bit of addiction to food here and there when it comes down to it, but god damn, 10,000 calories, shit. But of course, some of these athletes, some of these ones that especially like to bulk up and shit, some of them might do that, but you know, it is what it is.
it's the worst addiction.
Yeah.
It's the hardest because you can't live without it. So how do you live with just this much of it?
Exactly.
Well, why can't I have more? And
Right.
then once you have any psychological issues,
Right.
what is your desire? You want to comfort.
Exactly. So whatever the issues are, you figure food can solve that problem. Yeah. And then here we go again. But Skip, like I said, I don't feel as comfortable with Fury in this fight as I felt the last fight, because like I said, in the last fight, I was like, after watching the first fight, I was like, well, damn, unless Wilder lands that big power shot, he can't. And the thing is, Fury does everything to neutralize that. He know you trying to lay that trap. He know you trying to spring that right hand on him, and he just puts the jab in your face, box around, wheels around him, and he's where he thinks he is, he's not there. For a big man, he's skilled. I don't know if we'll see a big man that size be able to move like he can move. Skip, that he's 6'9" is that's LeBron James.
Yes.
That's LeBron James. I mean, 6'9".
Yep.
And Wilder is more like a small forward. He's 6'7", 230, so he's a small forward. So even LeBron is big. LeBron James outweighs Deontay Wilder by 20 pounds.
Maybe 30. But no, he's slimmed up.
Yeah, but Deontay Wilder, he can punch like an elephant, like an elephant trunk hits overall. You know, like you ever see those goddamn videos where an elephant trunk overall, you know, they don't look that powerful, but an elephant trunk, they can break a human being's spine with just one hit. Deontay Wilder, man, he has just otherworldly power. He has great power. So Tyson Fury, of course, he's going to have to watch out.
He back to 15, but yeah.
Okay, so how I see it have to unfold if Wilder's going to pull off what would be seen as a huge upset. He has to catch him once early. I'm going to say round 2.
Right.
And it has to be because Tyson Fury just can't take this. Seriously enough.
Right.
In the back of his mind, it's like, I did this twice and I don't really want to do this again. He doesn't have much respect, I think, for Wilder.
He does not.
He shamed him in the press
Yes,
conference
yes.
the other day.
I heavily disagree with that. Now, there's a difference overall in not respecting the person and not respecting the boxer. If Skip Bayless is trying to say that Tyson Fury, that he's taking him lightly, or that all in all that he does not respect him overall as a boxer, oh, make no mistake about it. Now, Tyson Fury, I think that he is correct in his assessment overall that Deontay Wilder, that what he did was a little bit mentally weak. But when it comes down to it overall, make no mistake about it, Tyson Fury realizes the threat of a Deontay Wilder. He knows that he can't fuck around in there.
He called him mentally weak and fragile and excuse
So you're going to make him go quit?
Yeah, all that. And yet, Deontay has gotten him once before. It was in the final round of the first bout. But he needs to catch him hard, flush, one time.
Right.
and sting him and hurt him and get him a little bit on his heels.
Right.
So it levels the playing field a little bit.
Right.
So that
I think Deontay Wilder, that if he's possibly going to win this fight, or if he's going to win this fight by decision, something around that, he's going to have to knock Tyson Fury down probably within the first 3 to 5 rounds. He's going to have to knock him down once, and the rounds are going to have to be close. So Deontay Wilder, he needs to launch a body attack early. I think he needs to jab to the body. I'm not sure if I would try to go head hunting with Tyson Fury way too often, at least with the jab, because I just don't think Deontay Wilder can out-jab Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury is probably the heavyweight overall that has debatably the best jab, at least when we talk about the bigger heavyweights.
Deontay can kind of ease into the fight with some comfort zone where he regains some confidence against him.
I agree with you, Skip, because the last fight Tyson Fury didn't fear him and he walked him down. Most people don't walk towards Deontay Wilder because he has that kind of dynamite in his hand. Okay. So you're gonna have to put some fear, like, oh.
Well, the reason why Tyson Fury did that, and I think that Luis Ortiz kind of laid out the blueprint, is because Deontay Wilder has very poor feet. He has very poor defense. At least he showed that in the past. Now, has he improved on that? We'll see. But I just don't think that you can improve on your feet that much within a year. And I don't even think he's been training that long when it comes down to it. I don't think that you can improve on your defense, or maybe your defense a little bit. But I don't know if you can improve on your feet that much. The footwork overall is something that, in my opinion, is, I mean, obviously that's something that you can work on. But that's also something a little bit more natural. Like when I watch Jake Paul fight, and I know that he's been sparring for about 3 years, his footwork is absolutely awful. I mean, it's not the worst that I've seen, but it's not great either. That's what I'll say. Footwork is more of a natural thing. Like, footwork is a kind of thing, and movement overall, that's more like, you got to just have that, overall. And if you box and spar with people, you know what I mean? Because certain people, when they begin boxing, you notice that they move their head. Like, when I sparred my father, one thing I always noticed about my father, he was always very swift. He was always very smooth when he fought. He always had great head movement. He always overall had great defense. He was very defensively responsible. He knew how to feint. He knew how to throw counters. And with that would help me in sparring. But when I had sparring, and I'm not saying that, in sparring that I was Floyd Mayweather or Muhammad Ali or anything like that. But I noticed that when I would spar certain people, especially that would be beginning, of course you can work on head movement. But head movement all in all, and I think that you just got to have the boxing IQ for that. Some people have very good head movement. Some people don't. It is what it is. Tyson Fury has excellent head movement for his size. Deontay Wilder has never had that great a head movement.
But he says, Skip, I'm hitting everything. I'm hitting shoulders, I'm hitting body, I'm hitting midsection, I'm hitting everything. But he has to throw. He can't just walk around, just follow Fury around, trying to land that one shot, because Fury's not going to...
He's not going to follow Fury around. He's going to be on the back foot. I can guarantee you that a certain amount of people, they think that Deontay Wilder is going to go in there and follow Fury around. No, he's not. Tyson Fury didn't gain that 20 extra pounds just so he can back up against Deontay Wilder the whole entire time and try to pity pat him and overall try to outbox him. He's doing that because he's going in there. He's doing that to bust Deontay Wilder up. That's what he's planning to do. He's planning to knock his ass out within the first 3 to 5 rounds. That's what Tyson Fury's aiming for. And Deontay Wilder, he's going to try to set up traps more than likely on the back foot. That's what I personally see.
Fury is much too skilled, much too smart of a fighter to just let you load up to land that one shot.
Okay, so what did Fury say the other day? I'm going to knock him the F out.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
I think he's going to try to get this over early because he's just tired of it. He wants it to go away.
Well, he might be trying to get over Skip because he's tired. Because that side you don't want to go.
I think that he's trying to get over early because I think he says, okay, well, you're going to make these allegations. I'm going to beat the living shit out of you. I think that's what Tyson Fury looks at it as. And I think he says overall, this dude alleges that I have no power and all this other stuff. I'm going to try to knock this dude out within the first 3 rounds. I'm going to literally beat the shit out of this guy. I think so. That's what Tyson Fury's mentality is. Now, could it be because of stamina issues? Who the hell knows? But Tyson Fury, even though in the past he has shown that he has, gained weight, I don't think Tyson Fury really is in a bad place mentally. I don't think that he is at all. And I've heard that he had some family issues and all that other stuff. But whenever I've seen Tyson Fury recently in training and all this other stuff, he's looked decently lean. I mean, compared to him. So it is what it is. I'm not really worried about the 20 extra pounds.
I agree because he'll know I really don't have the stamina I had before.
Right.
So I need to just get this thing over with, which might make him susceptible to catching the one shot.
Yes.
And listen, they always say about Deontay Wilder, he is the hardest puncher in boxing history. And it's kind of hard to quantify that because...
I'm not going to necessarily call him the hardest hitter in boxing history because... I can't necessarily say that Deontay Wilder knocked out any A-grade fighters, but he obviously can punch. There's no doubt about that. Deontay Wilder is one of the hardest hitters in boxing history, no doubt about it. If you were going to ask me who do I think is the hardest hitting heavyweight in history, in boxing history anyway, Mike Tyson, of course, is up there. George Foreman, many people would debate him as that. I have no problem with that either. Vladimir Klitschko also is up there as well. And a certain amount of people, they would ask, really? Freddie Roach trained with both Mike Tyson and Vladimir Klitschko. And he said that Vladimir Klitschko was hands down and undisputedly, the hardest hitter that he ever trained with. All right? And Freddie Roach has trained with everybody. So it is what it is.
And there were some greats I used to watch.
Big George.
Yeah, Big George could punch like a truck, no doubt about it. But that's what I think Deontay Wilder is. I think that he is the George Foreman of this era. Great power, but very raw boxing skills. George Foreman, he usually was not going to outbox people if they had, similar to him in size. But George Foreman, kind of like Deontay Wilder, how many people overall are you going to find that are similar to size in that? George Foreman was about 245, 250 pounds, could punch like a truck, and on top of that was about 6'4", 6'5". Deontay Wilder is 6'7", and when it comes down, it has about an 83-inch reach, and overall can punch like a truck. Tyson Fury, he's all wrong for him, I believe, because Deontay Wilder, he does not usually fight tall people very well.
Tyson, Jack Johnson.
Listen, Ali, young.
I forget about Jack Johnson. Yeah, he could punch like Rocky Marciano was Rocky Marciano could hit like a motherfucker. I'll tell you what.
Ali.
Yes.
Lightning power.
Joe Frazier, of course, as well. Muhammad Ali had great power as well. I don't know if I would put him on the same level as a Mike Tyson or George Foreman or someone like that, but he had great power, obviously.
No, but see, that's what it was. Ali was more speed.
The speed equated to power.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
But my point is, I'll give him this hardest punch.
That is true, and sometimes when a fighter actually punches faster than what they expect, that actually creates more power, or it creates more of a surprise element. Because when your opponent gets quickly fast in there and they, even if you kind of expect the punch coming, but it hits you in a way that you did not expect, or you're like, holy shit, that came much faster than I thought, the punch has that much more of an effect. Like I remember when he got knocked out by Conor McGregor. And this was the absolute best version that I've ever seen of Conor McGregor. This is why I say that he's nowhere near the same fighter that he used to be, because Conor, I remember in that Eddie Alvarez fight that every time that he even tapped Eddie Alvarez with the left hand, Eddie Alvarez would be going down. And Eddie Alvarez, he's a dude that has a decently tough chin, even though he can be knocked down. But Eddie Alvarez, after the fight, he said, they asked him, they said, how powerful was Conor McGregor because, you know, of course, you seem to feel his power. And he said, you know, it wasn't even his power. But the dude was so fast when it came down to it when he was punching me. And certain people overall, they may look at Conor and say that he's not that quick. But in Conor's prime, when overall he was countering people, that left hand comes in there extremely fast. Extremely fast. I'm not saying that he's Amir Khan or anything, or Manny Pacquiao. But they called it the kiss of death for a reason because Conor McGregor, that left hand was one of the biggest weapons in UFC history. Biggest weapons.
Sure,
Right.
Well, he's got to catch him once. And then if this thing can start to go on.
Also the same thing with Manny Pacquiao. There's so many fighters overall, you know, like Shane Mosley. Shane Mosley, I believe, when he got knocked out by Manny Pacquiao. Now, he kind of was a little bit older by the time Manny Pacquiao fought him. But when it came down to it overall, Shane Mosley, that was like one of the only times that I've ever seen Shane Mosley knocked down in his career against Manny Pacquiao. And he looked at Manny Pacquiao so flustered because he was like, what the hell just happened? Manny Pacquiao was so incredibly fast in his prime overall, even when he was older with age, that he can hit you with a punch and you don't even know what the hell just hit you.
And on toward, I'm going to go to the 9th round.
Right.
I believe that Wilder can get him again in the 9th and knock him down and completely
Right.
out.
And
So I think he's going to have to win by KO.
Oh, there's no question. That's the
in
only
the
way he can.
I'm not sure if Deontay Wilder, I don't know if he can last that long. And I think that's what Tyson Fury is planning. Don't get it twisted, though. I think that Tyson Fury, I think that he is prepared for a 12-round fight if need be. But once again, Tyson Fury is just one of those guys that, even if he does gain 20 pounds, I don't think that that's a very big problem.
Can't win. Yeah.
At least in terms of healthy weight.
The 9th round.
Right.
So that's what I got it. Sting him in the 2nd round, rock him and drop him in the 9th round.
And the thing is about Wilder's power, it doesn't dissipate. Because remember, Skip, he flew.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. If you get on his ass, yes, it does. If you get on a boxer's ass, or if you get on a fighter's ass, their power is going to dissipate. Yes, it does. You know, people always say that about certain fighters, that their power can carry through 12 rounds. If you get on a fighter's ass, or if you wear them down, no fighter's power is going to carry within 12 rounds, or at least not the same. And that was the reason why Deontay Wilder, he had no chance in that rematch against Tyson Fury. Because when Tyson Fury was wearing him down, first of all, Deontay Wilder never had an A-grade gas tank to begin with. And second of all, Tyson Fury was beating the literal shit out of him. And on top of that, Wilder, he just had no setup for his punches. There was no chance that he was going to knock out Tyson Fury as long as Tyson Fury stayed somewhat defensively responsible. There was no chance. Now, some people may say, well, what about the Luis Ortiz fights? Because he was getting outboxed in that fight. Yes, but Luis Ortiz did not press Deontay Wilder and was not getting to Deontay Wilder like a Tyson Fury was. Now, in the first fight, it was pretty competitive. But the problem with Luis Ortiz is that, first of all, he just really doesn't have that great a head movement. And on top of that, Luis Ortiz, he has a very big stamina issue as well. Luis Ortiz is a person to where, after about that 6th or 7th round, he's really going to start to drop pace. That's why I predicted in the second fight, I thought that Luis Ortiz was going to get knocked out within 6 rounds. Turned out he got knocked out within 7, but I pretty much was right on the money. Because Luis Ortiz, he's a decent boxer. He's okay, but he's not a person that has A-grade stamina.
Poured him in the 12th. To have still that kind of punching power in the later rounds after you've been fighting that long.
Yep.
So unless you know he can end the fight at any given time, even in the later rounds, most people have power in the early rounds, but as the fight starts to go, as you start to get tired, can you still generate that kind of punching power? Deontay Wilder can, but Skip,
I don't believe so. Don't get me wrong. Tyson Fury doesn't want to take any flush punches. But if Deontay Wilder, if he's getting his ass kicked within the first 5 rounds, the same way that he did in the rematch overall, his power is not going to be the same in round 9. Let me tell you this. If Tyson Fury gets to him the same way that he did in the second fight, it's not even going to go past 5 or 6 rounds, in my opinion.
he's going to have to do better than what he did the first time. He can't just look to land that one shot. Skip, he wasn't throwing any jabs. He wasn't doing anything. He was just looking to load up, try to catch it with that one shot, and Fear's like, I'm not, bruh. I see that thing coming from yesterday.
Seriously?
I'm not finna let you hit me with that.
Okay. So, I'm not trying to say...
And that's what's going to be so interesting, because I need to see how Deontay Wilder tries to set up that right hand. I need to see what adjustments he's going to try to make. That's what's going to be the very interesting thing in this fight.
The fight, but I will definitely watch the fight because I think Deontay Wilder has a great shot.
Yeah, you got, I mean...
I think he has a 30% chance. 40% chance at most, because
He is trying to make adjustments, and you just never know. His right hand, of course, is dynamite. But we'll see what happens.
A fight like this, Skip, it's still a big fight. No matter what you think of Fury, no matter what you think of Wilder, it is still a ginormous fight.
And it got a lot bigger when I heard 20 more pounds.
Right.
That's when it got real big to me.
But now, Skip, this is a more compelling fight.
Yep.
Once Anthony Joshua lost.
Yep, I agree. Here we go.
It's going to be a good one. I can't wait to watch it in person in Vegas tomorrow. I'm so excited.
Well, damn, man, you get to go, Alex, and we don't get to go. I mean, what's really going on here, Fox?
Thank you for watching.
God, they just have a million of those girls just lined up on the assembly line. There's a new goddamn girl in there every month. Anyway, when it comes down to the overall, I just thought that I would talk about that because I found that very, very interesting. But anyways, thank you all so much for watching. We'll see overall what happened in this fight tomorrow. Once again, I don't believe that the 20-pound difference is going to be that big of a deal. Certain people may disagree, but we'll just see what happens. Anyways, also, I'm going to talk about the other cards real quick. I believe that Konaki and the Polish fighter and Robert Elenius are going to be fighting again tomorrow. Who do I personally predict is going to win that fight? I'm going to go with Adam Konaki because I think that he kind of underestimated Robert Elenius last time. And don't get me wrong, Konaki, he's never going to be a champion. But Konaki, all in all, he is the more talented fighter in my opinion. And I think in the rematch, he's going to beat the hell out of Elenius. And I think that he's probably going to knock him out. Elenius is not a guy that is a very multi-dimensional fighter. Konaki, he is not extremely multi-dimensional either. But I think all in all that he's going to take this fight more seriously. Ife Ajagba, or Ife Ajagba, however you pronounce it, that one Nigerian fighter, I believe, or the fighter from Africa, he's going to be fighting that one Cuban fighter, Frank Sanchez, that I believe is from the Canelo Alvarez corner. That's going to be very interesting. I'm actually very excited for that fight. I believe personally that Frank Sanchez probably will pull it off. If Ife Ajagba, or Ife Ajagba, however you pronounce his name, if he were somehow able to get the knockout because he is so powerful, I wouldn't be surprised because he's kind of like a lesser version of Deontay Wilder. You know, I would get it, but Frank Sanchez, even though he doesn't necessarily have A-grade power, he has decent power, and I've seen Ajagba in fights to where he's been knocked down before, and he's just way too hittable. He comes in there very straight. He does not have great feet, and he doesn't have great defense. He just gets hit way too often. I'm going to go with Frank Sanchez, and I think that he gets a knockout. And then, of course, you have this new U.S. Contender, Jared Anderson. He looks very talented so far. We'll see what happens. I got to go with him because I don't even know the dude that he's facing tomorrow, but I believe Jared Anderson will get the job done. And then, of course, my prediction for Tyson Fury versus Deontay Wilder. I think that Tyson Fury gets him out of there within 5 to 9 rounds. That's what I personally believe. But we'll see what happens. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you all later.